guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about what happens after you take an Ahima credential exam. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so I typically get the question regarding what happens after I take my credential exam, and it's one of these 5. The CCS, the Certified Coding Specialist, the CCA, the Certified Coding Associate, the Ccs-P, the Certified Coding Specialist Physician-Based, the RHIT, the Registered Health Information Technician, or the RHIA, the Registered Health Information Administrator. Any one of these 5, I get this question a lot. What happens after I take the test at Pearson VUE Blue? Do they tell you which questions that you missed? What is the protocol, and how soon do you find out your scores and that kind of thing? So here we go. When you go there to Pearson VUE, Ahima has their tests administered through a third-party testing site, which is Pearson VUE, and they are the ones who are responsible for making sure that everybody gets booked in and set up with their computer station to take their exam. We can only take our exams at Pearson VUE. These are not eligible to be taken at home like other organizations do. They have a very strict policy at Pearson VUE, so they will, if your exam requires you to take in books, they will inspect the books. If you don't have any books to take in there with you, they will still make sure that you're not carrying anything that you're not supposed to. You are not allowed to wear big barrettes in your hair. You cannot wear belts. You can't wear anything, no jewelry or anything like that. They do allow for a wedding band, but they will not allow for other jewelry. So no earrings, no necklace, no nothing like that. Some people have told me that they were required to take off their glasses so that the person could inspect their glasses as well. So it is a quite in-depth process when you're going into these testing centers. But when you do go into the testing center and it's just you and the test for the next few hours, however long your test is, once you get done, you do have to raise your hand because you're on camera, and they will come in and collect you. You cannot just get up and leave the test center. You have to stay there until somebody comes to collect you. And then when you go out of the testing room, they will hand you a sheet that has your score on it if the exam is not in a beta period. Now, the only one that's going into a beta period here pretty soon is going to be the RHIA. I believe that will start in October. The Registered Health Information Administrator, they will be in a beta period beginning October. And what that means is they have to have a certain number of people take the test before they will release the scores. So you could be waiting for a few weeks for your results if you are in a beta period. And you can find out if your exam is in a beta period by going to ahima.org. That's ahima.org. And you can be able to see, because it'll tell you right there on the information banner under the credential that you want to sit for. But this sheet that has your score on it will say pass or it will say fail, and then it will break down the domains and it will give you the percentage of how much you scored in that particular section. So if you failed, you will be able to know, okay, which section do I really need to concentrate on? And you may have, your score may have come out to like barely failing, but it will show on the domains where you really do need to get a little bit more support in learning. But if you have barely failed, like barely missed it by a few points, don't think that that's going to be like, oh, well, I'm prepared for the next one. Because with Ahima, every single test is different. What you will be tested on in one test, you may not be tested on in the next test. These tests are created through a pool of questions. So there's going to be a certain number of questions for each domain, but they're not going to be broken down by domain. It's going to be all mixed in together. So you have to be prepared for anything. No one has the same exact test when it comes to the Ahima exams. So even if you just barely failed it, a lot of people will say, well, then I'll just take it again in 90 days because that's the cooling off period. If you have failed, your Ahima exam, the RHIT, the RHIA, the CCS, CCS-P, or the CCA, you have to wait 90 days before you can attempt the exam again. So that's plenty of time to go back to the drawing board and really buckle down and really dig in on the things that you know that you need to work on. And if you failed the exam, don't be hard on yourself. These tests are very difficult. Ahima does post the pass-fail rates for first-time test takers on their website because it's their way of transparency, and because they are a nonprofit organization, they do have to be transparent. So them telling you what these pass-fail scores are is a way for you to know, okay, this is what's going on in this organization because Ahima is a nonprofit organization. And when you look at your test scores, that's just them telling you, okay, you scored this percentage, this percentage, this percentage in this, in this domain. So again, you're not going to get the specific questions that you missed because then everybody could pass these tests. So that's why they carefully guard these questions. But if you did fail, you really do need to look at what went wrong in that particular scenario. Like, were you cramming? Were you taking too much time on a particular question? Because if you were, you do have to keep in mind that these are timed exams. And the CCS, for example, the Certified Coding Specialist, is a 4-hour exam. Not all exams are the same length, okay? Some are shorter. But with the CCS, for example, it's a 4-hour exam broken into 2 sections. So you know you need to get through quite quickly. And it's roughly 2 minutes per question because there is no set number of questions on these exams. So you don't know how many questions will be on your test until you get into the room. So that's another thing that you have to really prepare for. A lot of times people will say, well, if I fail it, I'll just take it again, and that's okay, to know that, to say, okay, I can take this test again if I fail, because ultimately you can. But at the same time, you really do need to study because you don't want to make that same trip again and again trying to pass this test. All right. So if what happened to you before is not working, then you need to change it up. Either spend more time with the book or get more practice in, because practice makes perfect, literally. But yes, that's the big part of these exams, is that they will give you this printout. It will tell you how much you scored in each section, and then you can move on and either that you passed or either that you failed. And if you did pass, that is wonderful. Congratulations. What do you do now? Now, if you haven't already started, then you need to make sure that your resume is put together and you're out there applying for jobs, whatever job that you want to apply for. When it comes to the new graduates and the newly certified credential holders, just because you're brand new, it doesn't automatically knock you out from competing for these positions. So don't only pigeonhole yourself into looking for entry-level positions. That's one thing that I really wish brand new people would stop doing, is stop being so dependent on, I need an entry-level position. Every job is entry-level when you first start. Everyone is, even those with experience still have to be trained on the electronic medical record if it's different from what they're used to. Okay. So everybody's going to go through this. So let's take that entry level mindset out, and really start concentrating on what we're there for, which is, we have this skill, we have this knowledge, let's apply it somewhere. Okay. So that's the thing that I would be, giving you guys the most advice about. But when it comes to failing, another thing that I want to say too about failing is that, there's so much to health information in the health information industry, period. There's a lot of things that you have to learn. And with like the RHIA and the RHIT, you're not going in there with any books. You don't take books in there with you. It's not like the medical coding certification exams where you do have your books with you, okay? But with the RHIT and the RHIA, they're going to give you all the information that you need in those questions to be able to answer the question. So it's not like a book is required. Again, because the RHIA and the RHIT are for our leaders, all right? And just because you may have failed the RHIA or the RHIT doesn't mean that you can't go on to take the test again and then just study even more. With the RHIA and the RHIT, it's heavily concentrated on, like, medical law and ethics and all of those other things, human resources side, because again, those are our leaders. If you know there's something that's tripping you up, then you need to make sure that you buckle down on that particular part. And again, if you fail it, there is a 90-day waiting period to take it again. And the biggest thing with the degree exams is that it's based on like application and recall and that kind of thing. So there's going to be a lot of those things. There's plenty of those question banks out there that can help you to study, okay, if you're having a struggle with that. If it is that you are, and for this goes for anybody, if you are in one of those Facebook groups where, everybody's taking that exam and that kind of thing, I don't really recommend those, because sometimes they can be a hotbed of negativity. And if somebody fails, they get all upset, and then all of a sudden they start scaring other people. And it's a very sensitive time when you're taking tests. So I would always recommend to just keep yourself as focused as possible. Don't let any other outside influences in, because that can really mess you up as well when you're sitting there trying to take the test. I've heard from many people who said that, oh, so-and-so complained about this test and so-and-so complained about that test. And then when I got in there, it wasn't so bad, but I was really worried about it before, because you were listening to other people and you shouldn't have. Okay. So that's the thing that I would say. You can't always listen to these people, especially the ones in the Facebook groups, because people have their motives for saying different things. And sometimes people are just naturally negative as far as like, they didn't do well on the test, or they didn't do well in the school, so they didn't do well on the test, and then somebody else's fault. Meanwhile, if they hadn't been studying on their own, they could have still passed it anyway. Okay, I truly do believe that anybody is capable of passing these tests as long as they put a lot of effort into studying and practicing. And that's where a lot of people kind of disconnect from me, because they're like, oh no, I don't want to write flashcards, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. What else do you have? If you can't listen to my advice, I can't help you. Okay, so that's just what I'm going to say there. I believe in going the old-fashioned way, and the old-fashioned way has not failed me 3 times, because I have taken all 3 medical coding certification exams with Ahima. I've taken the CCA, the CCS, and the CCS-P, the CCS-P, and then the CCS. So a little different in the order, but I did the CCA first, CCS-P, and then the CCS, and I passed them all when I took them. So that's the thing, that I did it that way because I had held on to the CCA for many, many years. And when I first got those results, I was screaming and hollering. So I was very excited to pass that test on the first try, because out of everybody in my class, I was the only one to pass it on the first try. But that was like study, 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 study. And it was just a constant, just go, go, go with the study. And so that's how I was able to pass. And with the CCS-P, it was the same thing. The lady, took me out of the room, and then she handed me the paper. She's like, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. Here you go. And I'm like, oh my God, I passed. But that's after having the CCA for 13 years. And I stubbornly held on to the CCA because I wanted to show people what CCAs could do. And so that's just what I did. And I will always advocate for the CCA. CCA is a wonderful credential. And again, like I said, I had it for many, many years. And so I did a lot of great things with it too. And so same thing with the CCS-P, when I got it in 2021, I was very excited to get it. And when I saw that paper, I saw the pass, and I saw my domains and the scores and everything. I was very excited. And the same thing that November of 2021, when I got my CCS. I took all that time from April all the way to October, because I took my exam in November for the CCS. And I did take some time off. I took a couple of weeks off before I took my test because I knew I wasn't going to learn anything new. And so coding on the inpatient side is new for me as far as like ICD-10 PCS and that kind of thing. That's something that I have not had practical hands-on in the real world doing. But I had been studying it and being so intensive as I was between April and October, that's what did it, and that's how I was able to pass. So all of the books that I have recommended, if you find yourself in this position where you didn't do so well and you failed the exam, make sure you check out the description box. You see where I'm talking right now. You'll see the title underneath it, right, in the YouTube box. And then you see like writing where it says disclaimer. And then you can click for more information. And then you'll see all of the links and everything that I recommend. So that way you can check out those books if that's something that you're interested in. Not every medical coding book to learn from is the same. And if you're dependent on these test prep books, especially the ones for the medical coding certifications from Ahima, the CCS, CCA, or the Ccs-P prep book from Ahima, if you're dependent on those to gauge whether you're ready or not, it's not a good thing because none of those questions are on the test. And, people will tell me, well, that's common sense. I know, but for some people, they will go through and memorize and go through again and again and again that book, and they think that that's all they need to know. And then when they go into the test room, then they fail, and then they're like, I don't know what happened, because you didn't study. And the books that I recommend, I've just talked about them many times. Again, they're in the description box below. I went through those books, and that was all I needed to prepare me for the exam. And it was everything that I needed to know in those as far as like the practice goes. Because if you're taking the CCS, 51.9% of that exam is your medical coding knowledge. So that's a very heavily weighted part of the exam. And it's 26%, I think, that is for regulatory and compliance on that one. And again, I've always left the links for how to find more information about those. And so check out the description box, guys, if you're interested. I also post those things on my Patreon channel. The link for my Patreon channel is in the description box below. It is a paid site that you go to support the creator, which would be me. But those funds go to funding my education. And the minimum pledge right now is $10 per month. So you get access to all of the quizzes and puzzles and everything else that I post along with the links. We just had our once a month study hall a couple of days ago and we were talking about that very thing, about like the CMS website and where to find all of those landing pages for all of those helpful websites and links for the administrative side, all those regulatory side of information. So it's a really just a gold mine of information on that CMS website. But yes, so that is basically my show today. You get 90 days if you have failed to sit for the exam again. If you have failed any one of the Ahima exams, make sure you go back to the drawing board and change the way that you studied. If you crammed, don't cram again. You already know that that's not gonna work for you. If you allow other people to get in your head about, oh, you can't do it, and oh, my spouse or my significant other is going to get upset and mad at me, and then you're preoccupied with what your significant other is thinking, and then all of a sudden it distracted you from taking your exam, what are you doing? What are you doing? Make sure that you focus on what you got in front of you. If no one else is doing this medical coding thing or health information thing but you, no one else can truly understand what it's like to go through these, preparing for these exams. So don't allow other people to get in your head. Now, other people may project their anxiety onto you because they think that they wouldn't be able to do that. So you shouldn't be able to do that. But in the meantime, again, if you've been studying, if you've been applying yourself, if you've been working hard, you need to focus on what you have. Stop telling other people what you're doing, okay? Especially if you're talking about it with your family and your friends and, you know, oh, I'm going to be taking my test and I'm going to be doing this and I'm going to be doing that. And then you got people talking to you in your head, in your ear. And then all of a sudden, all of that nervousness starts to come on and it's amplified even more. Don't do it. When I took the CCS-P, nobody knew. Not even my Patreons. And my Patreons were the ones who paid for my test. Again, those funds pay for my education. But I didn't tell them until after I had taken the test. And the same thing for the CCS. The reason that I kept it to myself was because of the simple fact that if I knew if I had said it beforehand, that I was going to get a ton of questions and it was going to be distracting. And I didn't want that distraction. So it's the same thing, guys. Sometimes you got to move in silence. And if you hear anything that I'm telling you now, if you have failed the exam and you didn't tell anybody, then don't tell anybody. Just go back to the drawing board and you go and you study again, but you change your approach. So that way you can be more prepared the next time when you go. And if you made the mistake of telling everybody that you took your test and now everybody has to know that you failed, there's no shame in it because, again, if they don't know what it's like, they're not going to understand it anyway. You pay attention to what you're doing. Go back to the drawing board. Make sure that you're studying in a different way. Choose a different type of study where you're looking up the codes and you're practicing the book for an hour. You take a break and then you go back for 30 minutes. Or you listen to the coding guidelines. You know, I've talked about that on my other shows before, guys. Watch the videos. Watch the videos because I do talk about those things. Listen to the guidelines. Make sure that you're reading them because faster reading is going to really help you. And another thing before I close this, I know I already said I'm going to close it, but I'm going to tell you this one more thing. If you're marking in your books, that's where you're wrong. You won't have time to read your notes, all these highlights and all this other stuff. The tabbing, no, okay? Especially with Ahima exams. Now, I'm not talking about AAPC, I'm talking about Ahima. And with all of their exams, the CCS, CCA, CCS-P, you cannot use the your homemade tabs. If the book comes with tabs, it's okay. You can use those. The AMA CPT Professional Edition does come with its own set of tabs. I've done the demonstration several times, and I did it only at you all's behest because, like I said in the video, if I have it my way, nobody would use tabs, but because if you are practicing like you should, you're not going to need the tabs and they're going to get in your way. So if you're going to restudy again, why don't you try to take those tabs off so that way you can use the book as it is intended without all that kerfuffle and just be able to work with the book, look at the book, find the answers, get used to the book. So that way when you are in there the second time or third time, you'll be prepared. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you are getting prepared for your test, best of luck to you, and make sure that you go in there as confident as a 2-year-old who's running into a room with a Superman t-shirt on. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks, guys. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see y'all again. Bye.